This is John Abrams, and this is the Variety Artist, episode 48. Years ago, there was a place here in LA called Crackers. It was a mishmash of crazy skits and wild characters singing and dancing with a surprise at every turn. It was the most fun you could ever have on a Friday or Saturday night. Well, Ray describes a place just like that in his town of Austin, Texas. Before or after you listen to this interview, you got to go to YouTube and watch some of Ray's videos. You'll meet the crazy characters and see why Esther's Follies has been a staple of Austin entertainment for the last 41 years.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
He's an award-winning magician and performs amazingly memorable characters and routines for the must-see Austin experience, Esther's Follies. He's also the artistic director. Variety Artist, I give you Ray Anderson.
Well, hello, everyone. Hello, John.
How's it going, Ray?
I'm doing great. Sitting here in beautiful Austin, Texas. It's about 70 degrees here and sunny. So all is right with the world.
I think that might be a little bit backwards because I'm in Southern California and it's raining like crazy here.
Well, you can send a little of the rain our way. We don't mind that.
I was doing some research on this interview last night, and I noticed there's another Ray Anderson magician.
There is, and we've become friends in the last few years. He's up in Canada. He calls me the famous Ray Anderson now. But anyway, he's a super nice guy and does a show called Battle of the Magicians. We've never actually met, but we've talked online many times and text back and forth. Super nice guy, and just happened to have the same name.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was watching this Battle of the Magicians, and it says Ray Anderson, Battle of the Magicians, and I was watching, and I'm thinking to myself, wait, how come Ray is not on that?
Right. Well, and also, what is it? Masters of Illusion actually accidentally called him looking for me to be on their show, the one they do on the CW network.
Oh, did he take it or what happened?
Well, he finally told them that they had the wrong Ray Anderson, but he sent his videotape anyway, I think.
Oh, that's great. I would. Why not?
Well, he knows I don't do television, so it was perfect.
So you didn't end up doing the Masters of Illusion?
I don't, although I have a lot of friends that do that show, and I do know gay, but I'm not a television guy. I am a live performer. That's what I like to do, and so I've always stuck with that. I had a bad experience with television in the early days with Esthers. We did a couple of specials for Comedy Central, and they came in and gave us the royal treatment and did it. But as we found out, not having a lot of control over your material or the way it's presented on television can be not a great thing. Mm. So it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth very early on, and I just decided that live was the way to go for me, and I've stuck to that ever since.
Well, live is much more fun.
For me, it is. I like the idea of sharing that experience that's happening right there in the now in that room with those people, and then it goes away, and it's never going to be recreated exactly the same way again.
Right.
I love the idea of sharing that with an audience. It's not like they're going to see it on television or anywhere else. They have to come where I'm at to see it. We have this shared experience, and then it's gone except in our own memories, and unless somebody's taping and they're not supposed to.
Yeah. And nowadays, who was it George Carlin before he died? He says, doesn't anybody ever watch anything anymore?
Oh, right. I know. I've never understood that either. It's like you miss out on so much life. But who goes back and really looks at that stuff anyway?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I converted all of my old videotapes onto YouTube because I kind of figured YouTube would live for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And there are things that I saw that I hadn't seen in 10 or 12 years. And I thought to myself, if I wasn't transferring these things, I probably wouldn't be looking at them.
Right. Especially day-to-day things and stuff. I can understand a little bit shows and routines that you might want to get out there for posterity, that kind of a thing. But it's like day-to-day life stuff. I just don't know. Maybe if I had kids, I would understand it a little bit.
I don't know. I videotaped a lot of my kids' stuff, and I didn't review it until years later. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Now, tell us about Esther's Follies. What exactly is Esther's Follies for people who have never seen it before?
Esther's Follies is a comedy show in the heart of Austin, Texas on 6th Street, which is sort of like a cleaner version of Bourbon Street in New Orleans. It has revelers going up and down the street to different bars and things like that. And right on the corner of that is our theater. And we're in our 41st season, believe it or not, this year. So we do have the longevity thing down. What Esther's is it's a combination. It's about a third musical parody, third political sketch comedy, and then a third magic. And that's sort of all thrown together. You want to think of it as sort of like Saturday Night Live with magic.
All right.
And you wouldn't think that would work, but somehow it does. Sometimes it's hard for people to describe what our show is even after they've gone and seen it. They'll try to tell a friend how great it is and everything else, and then they'll go to describe it and they'll finally just give up and say, you're just going to have to go see it.
That's not such a bad description either.
Yeah, that's well, word of mouth is the way we've done the last 41 years. We hardly advertise at all, never have. So most of our business is, word of mouth. The one thing about Esther's too is the theater itself is sort of like a big clubhouse with an aquatic theme. It's named after Esther Williams, the swimmer.
Oh yeah.
We always loved her kind of campy ways of doing her movies and swimming and stuff. And so they did this aquatic thing, and it's named after Esther Williams. It's called Esther's Follies.
Interesting.
And then the last thing that is so unique about our building is that the back wall, as the audience faces the stage, the wall behind the actors they're all windows. It opens up onto the street so that as the show is going on, people are walking by outside the window. So you have 300 people watching the show, but then also behind them is what's happening in the window sometimes. And then we also utilize the window where we take actors out there and have quick little pop-ups and stuff that are a part of the show as well. In fact, I send an audience volunteer that I pick from the audience outside the window at one point. And he's standing outside there holding this box that, where I'm going to shoot this dog supposedly through the window.
Yeah,
it's kind of a very unique thing. It's very Esthers and only Esthers. I've never seen it anywhere else, and part of what sets us apart as well. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about the window, because as a magician myself and yourself, anytime I'm setting up and I see a mirror behind me, I always make sure that all the angles are good and everything, or if there's a window or an audience member behind me. But you guys have embraced that.
It's funny because when I first heard about Esther's, one of the first things that I'd heard was that, you don't want to work there. There's a window behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I couldn't quite picture it either myself. When I first went and saw the show, my friend Mario Lorenz, who was a juggler, he was working in the show at the time, and he was kind of getting tired of working there. They were only in their 6th season. It was at their original building, which maybe held 70 people, no air conditioning. Very bohemian.
No.
But anyway, he had told me where this place was, which was a bad part of town back then. 6th Street was not a place that a young college student wanted to go. I was going to school at UT. So I got a little nervous. And then I found out once I got there that the entrance was actually in the alleyway.
Oh, no.
I was going down this dark alleyway. But then the next thing I knew, I kind of looked, and there were sort of these well-heeled people standing in line to get into this little place. And so I got in line and went in to see the show and saw how the window worked. Immediately embraced that idea. They had always used the window before, where they would pop up characters outside the window. It's great for that, for like television type stuff. You know how television is so great because something can pop into frame and then pop out very quickly.
Yeah.
But in a live show, they've got to walk all the way in. They have to walk all the way out on stage, that kind of thing. So this allows us to do that pop up, pop out quick thing. So like if we need Donald Trump to pop up for a quick little hello visual and then go away, it can happen in a matter of seconds. And for me, I decided to embrace the window by making fun of the people that walked by.
Oh, yeah.
I started incorporating that into my act, and it just clicked to the point now where all of my talk stuff that I do in the show, I do about a 10-minute stand-up set with magic. A lot of that is making fun of the people that walk by.
Sure.
So I incorporated it in that way.
And the show is different every single time because you have different people walking by every time.
Oh, yeah. You never know what you're going to get out there. Now, I will say this. You live by the window and you die by the window.
Is that right?
Sometimes something can happen out there that will totally kill your act, so it does happen. The other thing that people should understand is that we do large illusions there, like really large illusions on a very stage. We can bring in curtains. We have a full fly loft system there. So when we need to, we can bring in set props and curtains and things. So the window isn't always open for the magic.
Do you ever open those curtains and all of a sudden something really crazy is revealed outside the window?
Oh, there's not very much we haven't seen out there, and which is why I pretty much have a line for everything, But yes, we've had, there's always like sometimes some girl will have taken her top up and pressed her special two friends up against the window.
It's okay.
Well, I wasn't sure. And what do? That's going to stop your show, so you have to say something. And of course, mine is, it looks like the SEAL tank at SeaWorld out there tonight. It's like you kind of come across just about everything out there. And believe me, we have seen it all. So, yeah.
So let's go back to that time when before Esther's Follies. What were you doing before?
Well, I'd started out, I grew up in Victoria, Texas, which is about 2 hours away from Austin. I was involved in theater there and got a small scholarship from UT to study theater at UT. But I was already doing magic by then. I never thought I was going to be an actor. It was just the closest thing I could find.
Yeah, you and me both.
To help me with college. Also incorporate my magic. So I went up there with got into their BFA acting program, as well as minored in dance. So I was going to school at UT and living in the dorm there, Jester dorm, and had my little linking rings hanging up in the corner of my dorm room. And I was meeting some of the local people that performed in town, and that's where I've met Mario, who invited me to come to Esthers.
Okay.
Back then, I just guest spotted there. This was in their 6th year. So it's been 35 years since I first stepped on the boards there at Esthers. But I've only been there solidly for the last 30 years. There were 5 years there where I guested and then also did stand-up comedy clubs, a lot of corporate events for, different things like in the banquet room settings.
So did they just ask you to join the group after you were doing your guest spots?
Well, it was very informal back in the day. People that even work the door sometimes would be asked to come up maybe and do something on stage, to fill in for someone's, and the next thing you knew, they'd be part of the cast. It was run. It's Shannon Sedgwick and Michael Shelton are the originators of Esthers, and they're sort of old hippie types. They were young hippie types then, but older now. And
it happens.
And they're the ones that sort of put this thing together in the beginning, and they just had their friends come, and they were doing these shows. And Esther's was a pool hall where they originally were at, and so people would like once a week come and see the show and sit on the pool tables and watch the show. But then the next thing you knew, the show became very, very popular. They took the pool tables out and started putting chairs in there. It just started very organically that way. The closest I could think of maybe what a happening would have been in the 60s, you know what I mean? Where it was just a magical happening. It was just something where all of these things converged with the right people at the right time to make this a special place to be. And it really caught on from the very, very beginning. They went like that for maybe the first 7 years, and then that original place burned down.
Oh, no.
So then they moved to another place that didn't have the windows. And by then I had moved on. I was living in Pittsburgh for a time, and I was up in that part of the country doing mostly stand-up comedy clubs, but middling, doing magic with comedy, but more magic than comedy. So, I was never going to be a headliner, but I kept coming back and doing shows at Esther's when I was coming home for Christmas and the holidays. I'd book in for that. But when they'd gotten into this big old theater that also happened to be on 6th Street, they'd lost the windows. And I went there and guested, and I thought, oh, this is going to be it. There were more people on stage than in the audience,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had really lost their mojo. Then I went back, and I was still living in Pittsburgh, but I really didn't like the traveling part of performing. That was not it for me. I like being in the same place all the time. And about that time is when Esthers then moved to another space that had the windows again. Not the place we're in now, was a little smaller, but had the windows again, and they kind of got their mojo back.
Mm.
When that happened, I sort of looked at that and said, okay, you're not happy doing what you're doing now, where you're traveling, and I just sort of lost myself during that time, really. Traveling almost made me crazy.
Yeah.
It really mentally affected me in some ways, not having something to ground me, always being, away from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at that and I said, okay, it's not exactly what it is that I want, but it's close enough. And
Yeah.
so I contacted Shannon and Michael, and they said, sure, come on back. And, the rest is history. And by then they had sort of firmed things up to be a little bit more professional.
They had the window.
Yeah, they had the window again. And then after a year or two of doing that space, we bought the building that we're in now, which we've been in for over 27 years, I think.
Oh.
And it was much bigger, and we could do whatever we wanted to that building to make it more what we wanted. And that's when it became really the institution that it is now.
Well, how many days a week do you perform, or how many days a week are there shows?
The show days are Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday nights. We do 5 shows a week. So it's 1 show on Thursday, 2 on Friday, and 2 on Saturday. Since Esther's is ever changing, the rest of that time is spent writing and rehearsing. So say for a regular week for us, it all starts really on a Monday, where we have a writer's meeting for a couple of hours. And it's almost everything is written in-house. We do have a head writer now who's not part of the cast. That's been with us for about 7 years. We get together and sit around and talk about what we want to do. Then Tuesday is regular rehearsal from noon to 3, where we do a table reading and pick the things that look interesting to us. Again, on Wednesday, firming all of that up and cleaning it all up. And then on Thursday, we do an hour rehearsal before the show. And Friday, we do an hour rehearsal before the first show. And that's the way our week goes. But it is not uncommon for something to happen in the news on a Monday or Tuesday, and we will have something about it, if it's a big story, in by Thursday night.
Wow.
Esther's is ever changing. And even though we are left leaning in our political spectrum, we really are. Austin is very much a little blue dot in a big red state.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to make fun of anybody when they do something stupid. So we're right in the middle of this whole thing with the Virginia governor who did the blackface.
Oh yeah.
And, we have a whole song of him coming out as Michael Jackson to bad, and but he was so convincing that Liam Neeson kicked his ass. I think is how it finally ends. So that story breaks, and then here we go. We're writing on that first thing in the week.
Yeah. Now, does the whole show change, or do you change bits and pieces throughout?
No, the whole show is sort of ever changing as we go. It's like we don't just stop and change everything. It's like, and we have maybe 6 pieces in the show that are anchor pieces that are always in. They're classics. They're the ones that when people bring their friends to come see the show, that they want to see that. And if they don't, they're going to be disappointed. But it also helps us for our framework, where we can add new things that might work, maybe not as well or something, but it doesn't just kill the momentum of the show. Right. And then, of course, you have the magic, which doesn't change nearly as often, even though it does change over time as we go. As you know, it takes a lot longer to change out big illusions.
Right.
We'll maybe do 1 or 2 new things a year as things rotate in and rotate out. As far as the political stuff, that's constantly changing, just at the whims of what's ever in the news.
That's great. So if an audience member sees it in January and then they go back in June, they're going to see the stuff they love, plus they're going to see whatever's current.
That's exactly right. And I really think that's been the true secret to our success, because you're always, you can come from week to week, you're going to at least see 1 or 2 things that are new and different in the show, even if it's just what we call a medley song. We open the show with maybe 12 parody songs that are short little snippets of songs that are about different topics of the day. Like we have something on transgenders in the military right now. I mean, we hit it all. And those little snippets maybe are only one or two verses of a particular song, and they're all strung together in this medley that opens the show that maybe lasts about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So that's constantly changing as well. And so you might come in and see at least one new medley song on something that's happened that week. And then usually there's like a new sketch somewhere in the show, or maybe a new musical number. The bigger musical numbers take a little longer. We have a parody now that we're working on of Little Shop of Horrors called Little Hands of Horror. Which is about Donald Trump, and there's a plant in the White House, a Russian plant in the White House. It keeps eating all of his staffers. They're not really quitting. This plant is eating them, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger.
By the way, on a side note, that is my favorite musical movie.
You're kidding. I love that musical. Yeah. In fact, that was my idea to use that particular musical. Like I say, we're more than happy to hit both sides. It just seems right now Trump is dominating the news so much. We do have to be careful not to do too much, all on one subject. It's just the landscape has changed as far as news goes. And then you also have to be aware of what people actually are hearing in the news. We're all news junkies. So, sometimes we know so much more. So we also have to be careful to only do things where we think people know, the subject matter.
Right.
So you have to find the certain television shows. Like if they talk about it on Good Morning America, you can pretty much think that most people will know about it.
So when an outrageous news story comes across, are you just chomping at the bit? Are you just like, oh my God.
We can't wait. Yeah. Yeah. And those are the ones that you're writing at home, and then you've already got it ready to go to impress your buddies with, by the time you get to the theater.
It's fully formed, like 5 of you all bringing different scripts on the same story.
It's not uncommon for that to happen. Yeah. But that's, again, what makes it so special. It's like part of the secret to our success is there's always something new for the audience, but also for us.
Oh.
So easy to get caught up in a show that's just stagnant, and then you kind of, you get bored and you get tired and you start phoning it in. With our show, there's always something different, and so it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, you can't phone it in.
Right. So that, that really helps. It keeps you interested.
When did you go from performer? I know you were doing guest spots, and then you're doing all the spots, or a lot of the spots, to artistic director and performer.
I started in doing artistic direction, I guess, about 10 years ago. And before that, I took over the choreography of the show, which kind of lends itself to then eventually going into directing. My background in theater from UT sort of helped me along with that, but it's mostly just out of necessity. We had lost one of our cast members, who was Margaret Wiley, died very suddenly.
Oh, no.
She was not only one of the big stars of the show. She did a character called Chichi La Bamba, where she would pick a hunk of the night from the audience every night. But she also did the choreography, wrote, and did a lot of the direction. So when Margaret passed away, then it was just time naturally for me to step up. So I started first with the choreography, and then slowly getting into the direction of the show. Part of that too for me was because even though Esthers was great from the very beginning, it wasn't exactly what I wanted for myself, because I knew that I really wanted to do illusions, yet Esthers wasn't exactly right for that still, even when we moved into the place we're in now. So eventually we built a fly loft and things like that. And I naturally just wanted to take the show in a certain direction. And, it helped to have my say as part of that. But it's still very democratic too, and that everybody's voice is heard from our troupe. It's not it's not like my way or the highway kind of a thing. Everybody is willing to contribute. And Shannon, who is the founder of the show, is also still in the show, still performing in the show, and then also runs the rehearsals every week. So she's the one that writes down what we're going to work on and sort of does the lineup. And then I either choreograph or block scenes and direct scenes.
Well, since you talked about the one character, let's talk about your crazy character. Now, I listened to the YouTube thing, the one with the zebra shirt.
Yes, the amazing Frank.
Is that what it is? Because I tried
Yeah.
listening, I couldn't quite catch it. The amazing. Now, tell us about the amazing Frank.
Well, the amazing Frank is sort of he's my cheesy magic character. He's sort of like every magician in Las Vegas that never made the big room. He's not Siegfried and Roy, which sometimes people think that. It's like, I think Siegfried and Roy are wonderful. It's the guy that tried to rip off Siegfried and Roy.
Okay. So let's start with what is he wearing?
He wears like a different leopard or zebra printed jacket that's cut all the way down to the navel, black spandex pants with a nice big cod piece in a big pompadour.
Well, wait. Don't go so fast over the cod piece, because that is one of the major plot points of the show, or at least
right. Well, the thing about the cod piece is it sort of has a mind of its own. So while Frank is doing his magic stuff, this thing has a tendency to wander in the breeches. And usually it's how Frank's assistant gets him back.
For anybody who hasn't seen that, his cod piece is about the size of a melon? A grapefruit? I don't know.
I'll say a large orange.
Okay.
But Frank is the invention for me because I was a big Bette Midler fan when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And, I had first seen The Rose, and I loved that movie, so I went to go see another film. Their very next film was a concert film, and it was called Divine Madness.
Yep.
And I just couldn't believe it. I had no idea that she also did this crazy, zany stage show. But the thing that I found the coolest about it was that she could go from doing, these knockdown, drag-out ballads where she has everybody in the audience crying at one moment, to doing these filthy, vulgar jokes, to then turning around and doing this character that she called Dolores Delaga, the Toast of Chicago, who was a cheesy lounge singer act. And I immediately gravitated to that because it was around that time that magicians were pretty much one note a lot of times. They played themselves on stage, but they didn't allow themselves much of a range. They were always sort of that mystical, all-powerful type guy.
Right.
That just didn't appeal to me. I thought it was so limiting. I really took a page from Bette Midler's book and began honing my characterization of myself on stage by being able to do these really great sentimental pieces, but then turn around and be very bawdy the next in my stand-up type comedy, and then also doing characters in the show. And Frank was my Dolores Delaga. She was a send-up of all these magicians that I had seen that weren't quite ready for prime time. The other thing that it allowed me to do was to do the kind of tricks that normally my regular character might not have done. Mm-hmm. I never could understand why you would put a girl in a box and then proceed to stick swords in it and what's your motivation there? Yeah. For me personally, that just wasn't my thing. I could never quite understand that, but it works perfectly for Frank because he's
so outrageous.
Yeah, he's a terrible masochistic guy. But the lucky thing is that the assistant gets him in the end every time. He always loses in the end. But it allowed me and freed me up to be able to do these types of things, give it a reason. And the audience also sort of forgives me for it because they know it's me underneath all of that. And even though I'm playing a character, of course, it's still me under there. Frank doesn't come out until the very end of the show. He's the last thing that I do. So they've gotten to know me all the way through the show before he appears.
Gotcha.
I have made the mistake before of just doing Frank. I did him at a magic convention one time in Vegas and just did Frank, and they hated me.
Oh, no.
Well, Siegfried and Roy were in the audience, too.
Oh, no.
I think they thought I was making fun of them. They just... Nobody got it. They just hated it, except for my dear friend Tom Mullica, who I could hear laughing in the back.
All you hear is one person in the very back laughing his head.
Yeah. That was my buddy Tom, who I hadn't seen in a while. He had been in Paris working at the Crazy Horse for about 6 years.
Oh.
And he didn't even know it was me.
Oh, really?
No, he was just laughing. He had no idea it was me. So
there's some crazy guy on stage.
Yeah, right. But he got the humor. He thought it was really funny. But it was a good lesson learned for me that Frank is an acquired taste, and you have to understand where he's coming from by knowing me beforehand throughout the show. He's one of the best things, the people love Frank here. He's iconic at Esther's. Yeah.
In fact, let's talk about what am I going to even call it? Life-size doll of Frank? What is that thing?
We had those statues made for the lobby for people to take pictures with. If we have 3, there's me as an amazing Frank. There's Margaret, who I'd mentioned earlier, who's the lady who died as Chichi La Bamba. And then the center one is Shannon, who is the owner of Esther's and the originator, along with her husband. And she does Patsy Cline.
Oh.
But she does this wild act where she sings, I've got these little things, she's got you. And she starts pulling all kinds of stuff out of her dress, out of her bosom. Mm-hmm. And it starts getting outrageous, like golf clubs and saws and pipe, real pipe wrenches and, and stuff. And it's become a classic. So that's, there again, one of those 6 things that I tell you about that are in the show that people want to see every time. Yeah. Patsy is one of those, and then Frank is also one. People be disappointed if Frank's not in.
So right when the audience walks into the foyer, they see their favorite characters, huh?
Right. Although we finally had to put them up very high. They're up about 10 feet above where now people can't take their pictures with them because people kept grabbing onto Frank's crotch when they were taking the picture, and they were damaging the statues. So we finally had to put him up where people couldn't get to him anymore. So we just put them all up there.
I want to be in on that meeting. Everybody grabbing Frank's crotch.
I'm glad I didn't have ghost feelings about it or anything, like when people lose a limb.
Oh, yeah. That wouldn't be good.
No.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to something called Fact or Something John Just Made Up. Does that sound like fun?
Oh, sure.
Is it fact? Or is it something John just made up?
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to read a headline, and you're going to tell me whether it's true or not. And if it is true, tell me a little more about it.
Sure.
First headline. As an aspiring young artist, Ray had a notorious experience in a castle.
Ah, yes. Very true.
True?
True. And do you want to hear the story?
I totally want to hear the story.
This was my first visit to the Magic Castle. I was all of maybe 19 years old. Luckily, the drinking age hadn't changed by then. And I went to the Magic Castle for the very first time. And when I went by myself, went in and saw some of the shows, and then sat down at the front bar that's up there by Irma.
Irma, for anybody who doesn't know, Irma is the piano that plays itself.
Right.
Plays any song that you call out.
Right. So anyway, I sat down and was having a drink, and this kindly old man with gray hair and giant Coke bottle glasses kind of comes up and sits down next to me and proceeds to talk to me about myself, and of being a young 19-year-old kid who thinks he knows everything is more than happy to tell him how great I am.
Of course.
And so I talked with the gentleman for 10 or 15 minutes about how wonderful I am, never thinking to ask him anything about himself, as you do as a kid. Yep. And then finally he said, well, I'm going off now to go see a close-up show. It was just such a pleasure talking to you. And I said, oh, great talking to you too. And I turned back, and the bartender comes over and he says, you realize who that was, right? And I go, no. And he goes, that was Cary Grant.
Oh.
And I never even thought once to ask him anything about himself or even his name.
You're thinking to yourself, look how great I am.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a great lesson learned, but oh, what a shame, because now I could think of a million things I would have loved to have asked him,
Oh, talk about interviews.
I loved Cary Grant, and I love old movies, so he didn't look like he did in the movies, so I didn't recognize him. A hard lesson learned.
Oh, so, man.
Stop talking about yourself, shut up and listen. And I've remembered that ever since. Yeah.
Next headline. Ray once went on stage with his codpiece on backwards just to see the audience reaction.
False.
Okay.
I have accidentally gone out without it in, and that was very embarrassing because I'm actually quite shy,
Oh,
and those pants leave nothing to the imagination.
I'm sure.
I'm okay as long as that's in there.
And I think your assistant grabbed your codpiece at some point in time.
She does, yeah, and it was much more painful for that particular performance. Yeah. But it was in the choreography, so she did it.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay. Next headline. While performing magic to an audience of 400 people, Ray killed a mouse with his bare toes.
Oh, I am afraid that is true.
How did that happen?
That is also probably my worst experience ever on stage. Well, first I'll start out by saying that I do a fountain levitation. Magicians will know that, where you levitate a woman on a fountain of water, and then the water goes away, and it's all built into the stage at Esthers. It's done in this little wading pool. Looks like a children's wading pool.
It looks great too. I've seen your video of it. It's a great illusion. Looks terrific.
Oh yeah, it's really, really fun to do too. Well, anyway, it was after the first show. You go, and then when you get back to get ready to do it for the second show, the costume is still wet. At least the pants and the shoes are. So I'm putting all of this on and don't think anything of it. And I go out to do the trick, and I'm standing there doing the illusion, and I realize that something is moving in my shoe. But I didn't feel it when I put it on in the beginning because everything was wet and squishy anyway. And so then it bites me on one of my toes, and I can't move because for that particular trick, if you move, you're going to expose how the illusion is done. And I didn't want it to bite me again. So while I'm doing the trick, I bear down with all of my toes and kill the mouse in my shoe. So it won't bite me again. And then stand there, finish the trick, and they go upstairs, shaked out my shoe, and didn't have time, had to get ready and go do something else. So it was just horrible.
So now when this was going on, did you realize it was a mouse, or did you think it was a spider, or what the heck?
I knew immediately it was a mouse when it bit me. Because it moved and I could feel it in my shoe. I wear those kind of shoes that they wear on decks of, that have water and stuff. They're kind of neoprene made shoes and stuff. So they're kind of squishy anyway when they're wet. So when I put my foot in, I just didn't feel it. But then once I got there, I felt the whole thing moving around by my toes right before it bit me. It's like, now this is the magician I am. I didn't move and expose the illusion. Instead, I killed the mouse. So,
and a big audience is watching you, and you're standing.
I never knew any of it. Yeah.
That's awful. All right, next headline. Ray's sawing the girl in half with a chainsaw once went terribly wrong.
No, it's never gone terribly wrong. Although I do saw a girl in half with a chainsaw.
As Frank, right?
Yeah. As Frank, that's right.
Is that one of those illusions that you may not do personally as Ray?
Oh, right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's an illusion I would probably not do as myself, right? In the past, I have done some illusions. I think a lot of people would be familiar with the origami illusion, where you put the girl in the box and fold it up and then put swords in it. And I was never happy with that routine when I did it very early on for that very fact. But I forced myself to pick an illusion to do again, because I'd always kind of told people, I just don't like those kind of illusions where you're pushing these swords in, because I just can't ever think of a reason why you would do that. So I gave myself a little exercise, and I picked an illusion, and I picked the origami just because there was one available. Decided I was going to revisit that, but give it a reason to put the swords in and have it all make sense. And just recently did this, maybe within the last year. What I came up with was doing the routine like a tango, and the box has hearts, like a heart on it, but it sort of looks like a tattoo, kind of funky heart thing. So when the box is closed, there's hearts on all the sides of it. And I have a little poem that talks about being careful who you let into your heart, because cruelty is a work of art, kind of an idea that explains the whole thing in a little poem. But then we do the routine as a tango. So each of us has, instead of a sword, it's a knife, but we both pick up a knife and then hold it behind our backs as we look at each other. Then it becomes like a tango, that give and take, love, hate sort of an idea. So it changes the whole thing up. And then I let the girl into my heart as she goes in, and then I push all, the knives through. But then when she comes back out at the end and reappears, she then takes that last sword and slides it across my neck as the
beautiful.
lights go out. So it's a tango thing, and it makes perfect sense and gives a reason for the knives.
Yeah, that's so much more effective than just Joe Schmo in a tuxedo stabbing swords.
Like if I was going to do something like that, I wanted a reason. So I just created this exercise for myself on my own and did it. And it turned out great. I got a great routine out of it. It's actually a trick that we keep backstage in case something goes wrong.
And that's one of those that people probably want.
It's an alternate, but it's a great routine and fits in anywhere because it's a 2-person act.
All right, we're going to go to our last headline. Listening to the 1967 song Windy by The Association make Ray's nose hurt.
This is not a magic story, but all right. First of all, you have to know that I have a pug nose. So if you don't know that, it doesn't work. When I was a kid, I've always loved music. I've had a great affinity for music, really love it. Very close connection to music. But my sister, my older sister by about 7 years, she had the record player in her room, and I didn't have any way to listen to music, but I could hear her music coming out of her room, but I wasn't allowed in her room. And so I used to sneak into her room and listen to her record player, except that I didn't know how to turn it on. And it was one of those older models back in the day. And she had the record on there, and I knew how to put the needle on there, but I would have to spin it with my finger to get it to go. So you can imagine, it's like, who's tripping down the streets of fast city? And I'm listening to this and laughing and having a great time. And I hear my sister come home from school. So I go and I run and I hide behind her bedroom door. She's got this full-length mirror on the back of her door. And I'm kind of laughing and looking at myself in the mirror. And she comes through and she sees me through the crack in the wall or in the door. All I see are fingers coming on either side of that door. And then the mirror goes away from me. And then I see my own face smash right into this mirror as I'm laughing and then pull away. And for years, I used to tell everybody that that's why I had a pug nose.
It used to be huge. It was a giant nose.
Yeah, it used to be a huge nose, but my sister broke it, and now it's a pug nose. But that's the story.
So whenever you hear that song, it brings back painful memories.
When I hear that song, it will always remind me, and it kind of makes my nose tingle just a little bit, yeah. But the worst part of it was watching my own face smash into itself as I was laughing.
That was fact. Or something John just made up.
All right, we're going to go into some fan questions. Nick Lewin, who is an amazing magician,
Yes, he is.
says, my favorite magician. That's all, no question.
Oh, well, that's very nice.
All right, well, here's a question from Regina Martinez, a.k.a. Silly Sparkles, out of Austin, Texas.
Ah, wonderful.
Asks, and this is interesting, I'm curious to know, is he involved with a local magic community? If so, do they have a secret meetup? Asking for a friend, cough, cough.
Well, as most of your magician people would know, there are local magic rings here. There's the Society of American Magicians and the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Both have local monthly meetings here, and I'm involved with all of the magicians here in town that do those meetings and stuff. In fact, there's a really big magic community here in Austin, including Nick Lewin.
Oh.
He's an amazing guy and so wonderful to have him here.
He was on my podcast just a few weeks ago. He has a terrific interview also.
Oh my gosh, Nick is an amazing guy. And I ask Nick for his advice all the time. It was a very special day when he moved here to Austin.
Oh, I'll bet.
Even though he's not that much older than me, I consider him a mentor.
Well, the whole interview is about how to structure your show. And he has some great tips on how to structure a routine or a show. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we've spent many a night ourselves talking about that over a little sipping tequila. Yeah.
So can my friend Regina just go online and find these groups?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to go online and look up the Society of American Magicians or the International Brotherhood of Magicians. The local Society of American Magicians is... I think their group number is group 206.
Okay.
And then the IBM ring, they call them rings, is ring 60 of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. And they're very welcoming and wonderful people. You'll meet some great people there, and they have all different levels from beginner to professionals, and they do all kinds of lectures that come into town and just a lot of great fellowship.
It's a great thing to get involved with. I'm involved in the Ring and Cadabra here, a couple of magic groups here, and we all help each other, and it's beneficial to become a part of those.
Yeah.
So Ray, do you have some advice for the beginner?
The advice I always give beginners is there's just no substitute for being on the boards and working. That is the only way that you really get good at this profession. You really just have to get in front of the audience and work. And I also say there's no excuse for not working. When people bemoan the fact that they don't have enough shows or that sort of thing when they're starting out, I give them zero sympathy. Yeah. I'd say you have to go out and find those shows, whether they're pay gigs or not, when you're first starting out. You can volunteer your time. There's always rest homes that you can go and perform at. That's exactly what I did when I was a kid. You really just have to get up in front of people and perform, and there's just no excuse for not doing that. That's how you learn. There's a million other things that you can do, but I think that that's probably the most important.
Yeah, because you can do it a million times in front of your mirror or in your bedroom, and it's not the same as getting in front of a live audience.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. I also say to people too, even though practice is one of the main things for magicians, is that don't wait until everything's perfect before you do it. A particular thing as well. Go with what you got. Don't wait till you have the perfect show. Go with what you got. You've got 10 minutes or something like that. Find a place where you can do that and work that as you go. And then as you go along, you add on to that. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity, because most of the time that never shows up.
Right. Not only that, but if you do wait for the perfect opportunity, then you're going to get on stage and it's going to be completely different than it was in your bedroom when you were practicing.
Yes, that's exactly right as well. Yeah.
So get out on stage. Dang it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. How about for the working pro?
From the working pro, I would say don't overthink things. I think all of us have a tendency as we go along and we learn and we read about our craft, that sometimes we will begin to overthink things. I'll give you a good example here is I had a very dear friend who's a very accomplished magician who called me up, and he was just in a funk because he was working on this trick, but he was trying to justify the prop that he was using, which just looked like a magic prop. He just didn't want to do it, because he couldn't justify this thing, and he was trying to figure out a way to make the thing look like something else. And sometimes that's great if it's natural for you to do that, and it comes to you very quickly. I think that's wonderful. But this was prohibiting him from doing what otherwise would have been a great routine, simply because he was overthinking the idea of using this prop because it looked like a magic prop. And then I thought, well, you're a magician, of course you have magic props. And then I found this great saying that says, uncommon adventures use uncommon tools. If you think about that, what that's telling you is that of course a magician might use something that looks like a magic prop because he's a magician. So not everything has to be something else. I mean, there are times when that's great, but there again, it's like he was so in his head, and he had just recently gone to some convention where he had watched a lecture, and they were talking about how everything has to have a reason, but then he just kind of overthought the whole thing, and then eventually turned around and
once he accepted that this was just going to look like a magic prop, it was completely different. And it's one of his favorite things in the show now.
Oh, and it's perfect now.
Yeah. He was just overthinking it. And I have a tendency to do that myself. I think sometimes we read so much and about things, and we listen to other people so much that we forget to trust our own instincts,
Well, this has been fun, Ray. Thanks for doing my show. Was this fun for you?
Oh, I had a blast. Yeah, it was wonderful. And you popped my cherry. This is my first podcast. So.
Hey, the first of many, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. This one was fun. I'll do another one.
It was fun. Do you want to promote any social media or anything else?
Oh, gosh, I may be the only person that doesn't have to do that.
Okay.
No, you can come see Esthers, if you happen to be in Austin. But other than that, I have no wares to sell.
Hey, well, you know what I'm going to do then? I'll put a link to get tickets for Esthers on your show notes on my website.
Great. Yeah, we're always happy to see that. And if you're a magician, I always say goodbye to everybody after each show, and come up to the stage after the show and say hello and introduce yourself. I'm always happy to talk to fellow magi.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks to all my variety artists. If you found this podcast valuable, share it with your friends or on your social media. That's how we can create an entire variety arts revolution. Also, make sure to get your free audiobook from audible.com. Just go to thevarietyartist.com/book to get your first book for free. You can reach me at my email at john@thevarietyartist.com, or join my Facebook group where you can ask questions of the people that I get on this to interview on this podcast. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.